Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. So every clergy person is going to talk about the Super Bowl. But seeing how the Chiefs aren't playing, I ain't talking about the Super Bowl. I'm just here for the snacks and the concert. Because Snoop Dogg is back. And if you're from my generation, you're excited about that. The rest of y'all are like, who? Snoopy? All right, so let's talk about the Beatitudes. Because, So we like to clean the Beatitudes up because most of us are very middle class, upper middle class, white, very comfortable people. And there is nothing more uncomfortable than the Beatitudes. Because we're really good about ignoring certain parts of Scripture that are like, ooh, woe to you? Well, shoot. Because that's a woe to me right there. And so we drop stuff off, we clean them up, we try and, Jesus is literal until the Beatitudes. And then suddenly, it's all metaphor. I'm like, where were you with all this other stuff? You're all worried about sex and women and stuff like that, and suddenly it's metaphorical? All right. It's not metaphorical. It's not. So Jesus has been out healing people and doing good works, and people are loving it. Because there's nothing you and I love more than feeling better. Like if Jesus came along and was like, boom, Meg, you don't have MS, I'd be like, sweet Jesus. We all like to feel better, right? The best feeling you will ever have is the day after the stomach flu. You know it, right? That right? That moment you realize you're not sick. We all like to feel better. We all like to feel good. And Jesus has been making people feel good, and they like that. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, y'all sit down now. It's about to get real. And they're like, excuse me? Excuse me? I'm going to go back to the stomach flu I had. Because I don't like your stories of, empowering the poor and helping the downtrodden and oppressed and saying that I'm to blame for the oppressed being oppressed. I didn't oppress nobody. Right? We white people are really, really good at being like, I didn't do that. I didn't have slaves. I don't know why y'all upset about me. I ain't never had no slaves. Yeah. So Jesus is about to get real. And you and I need to hear these things. So I'm not talking about the Super Bowl. I'm not talking about feel-good stuff. I'm talking about the stuff you and I have got to hear because we're really, really good about not hearing it or justifying how we're not to blame. We're the really good white people. Okay, it is not just the sins that we commit knowingly. It is also the sins that you and I benefit from unknowingly. We talk about, well, people just like to live in different neighborhoods, right? No. People do not just like to live in different neighborhoods. There's this fun little thing called the red line. And so basically what they did is they took a map because white people were really worried about our house price, right? We don't want anyone lowering our value of our home. So they would come up with maps and they say, okay, people who look a certain way don't live within this perimeter, okay? Because these people don't want their home values to go down. And this, you think, is something that used to happen. I will tell you right now, in my neighborhood, when we were just discussing the boundaries for the new middle school, this came up in my neighborhood. There was a Facebook conversation about, ooh, but we don't want our kids to go to that middle school because then our price value of our home will go down. These are good people. We are all good people, good Christian people, right? Every single one of us struggles with this. We all struggle with this because it's all fine and dandy when it's out there. But when it's me and my stuff, I don't want to lose it. I paid a lot of money for my house. What if nobody wants it? But I'll tell you what, our football team's good. Brothers and sisters, we have a problem. And it's a long problem. We all want to say, well, but Martin Luther King. But we all love Martin Luther King after they killed him. Martin Luther King was not popular at the time at all. And we white clergy were really mad at him for making us look bad sometimes. He's like, oh, but it's the silent majority that is the problem. It's those of us who are quiet and silent and innocent that are the real issue. We allow oppression to continue because we don't say anything, because God help us if we're uncomfortable. And that can't happen. Today is the feast day of Absalom Jones. Absalom Jones died in 1818. For those of you who don't know who he is, which is like everybody, Absalom Jones was the first Episcopal black priest. Yeah, super cool dude. Look him up. He was born into slavery. He was originally a slave. And then gets involved in religion and kind of starts the church. And then one day they come in and they say, well, what are all these black people doing in the midst of everybody else? Y'all go upstairs. And they're like, no, we did this. But you can't be with us. And so he's like, forget it. So he and another dude leave, and they start the first Ame Church. And in Philadelphia, the church is still there, actually. And then eventually petitions to be part of the Episcopal Church, and is eventually ordained as an Episcopal priest. So I want us to think about that. This man died in 1818. He never saw the stuff that he was fighting for. It was decades later. Decades later. But we have a man born into slavery who literally knew no freedom, who fought for freedom. We had a man who proclaimed a gospel that he probably didn't really experience a whole lot. And I want us to think about that, because when we get to the Beatitudes, it's really, really easy to be like, but we've already done that. And I didn't do that. So what do you mean, woe to me? What do you mean I should be changing the world? What do you mean that this should get real? What do you mean I'm responsible? That I've got to change things? It doesn't feel good, does it? And we like the Jesus that makes us feel good. The Jesus that allows us to turn back and judge history and be like, oh, well, those people back then. Guys, back then is now. You and I are still doing these things. We don't mean to. We don't. We're just trying to do our thing. And yet, we allow this stuff to continue. We allow it to continue. So did anyone notice all the historically black colleges that got calls for bomb threats? Where were you and I? When we see police violence against black men, where are you and I? When we see these things happening, where are you and I? Are we worried? Are we worried that somebody might not like us? What if we offend somebody? And that, my friends, is privilege. If you and I have the ability to not worry about it, that's privilege. Because I want you to think about being in a situation where you don't get that choice. You don't get to worry about what happens when you get pulled over. You don't have to worry about what you teach in history and it offending you or hurting your feelings. Because those are your ancestors that we're talking about in those history books. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose your neighborhoods. You don't get to choose those things. And you and I are worried about getting our feelings hurt. You and I are worried about getting our feelings hurt. You and I aren't worried about being killed. You and I aren't worried about being beat up after the football game. You and I aren't worried. And that is when the Beatitudes get real. When you and I have to come face to face with the fact that sometimes we're the ones laughing and then we're the ones celebrating and we're the ones ignoring while other people are suffering. And woe to us. Told you I wasn't going to talk about the Super Bowl. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. All right, let us stand together and say the words of the Nicene Creed.